Hi guys, and welcome back to the Early Bird Photo News. Today we got a big box from Canon on my desk, and that can mean only one thing: my new lens has finally arrived. So let's take it out and see what it is. Lots of things we don't need. And a much smaller box in the much bigger box. Kind of reminds me a little bit of those Russian dolls. A nice belt, another thing I will never use. Some padding, more padding. Man, that was a lot of unpacking. We still haven't actually gotten through the actual lens. It is the new shiny lens. I was almost going to say I have to do a sniff test because it does smell a little bit funny. But I think sniff test is for other people, isn't it? Man, they're really good these days at wrapping. And finally we have the lens here, the new RF 600mm f4. And I must say it's pretty nice and light. That's my very first impression, and one of the main reasons I actually bought this lens. If we grab my old EF version 2 600mm lens, you just can feel how much heavier it is. And actually, if I hold these side by side, this one is just so much lighter. I can move it around on my wrist, whereas this one is a real heavy little thing. One of the things I'm hoping to be able to do with this lens much more as well is handheld video. That's something that has been very difficult with the EF lens, and it's almost impossible because it just shakes too much. With this much lighter lens, improved autofocusing, improved image stabilization, I'm hopeful I might be able to do more of that, and that will be a big improvement to my workflow in the field. Interestingly, a lot of you guys have guessed that I would be getting an RF 5.6 800mm lens or 1200mm lens, but in all honesty, neither of these lenses have interested me very much. 1200mm is just way too much, because a lot of times I'm in a hide, for instance, I'm shooting some larger birds and some smaller birds, and 800mm in these situations can be too long. Hopefully this RF version with the new RF teleconverters will perform really well. I'm looking forward to taking some images and then sharing them with all of you. Because I like to scratch my lenses and just have them flying around in the car, we'll also put on one of these lens coats that have always done a great job for me in protecting the lens. I don't really use it as much for just the camouflage effect, but mainly to prevent a lot of scratches on the nice new lenses. And there we go. I never put any lens coats on the manual focusing ring because I just want to easily be able to grab it. And I feel like if I have this neoprene cover on the manual focusing ring, it makes it harder for me to grab it. So this is all the pieces that I use on the lens. And there's the lens hood. And here we got the lens in all its glory with a brand new digital camo lens coat, which personally is my favorite. Talking about lenses, this week I also had the chance to review the Canon RF 100 to 400mm lens. It goes from f5.6 to f8, and I must say this teeny tiny little lens has actually quite surprised me because it's so lightweight, doesn't cost much, only $650 US, and when it came to the image quality, it actually delivered very nicely when I was photographing the birds in my backyard or my infamous car park curlews. So I was very surprised with how the lens worked, and what surprised me the most is actually the image stabilization in that lens, because it's so smooth, at least as good as any other Canon lens that I've ever tried. Obviously, part of the reason is that this lens is so light, and when I used it with a R5 with no battery grip, I could basically hold this combo in one hand and it was still super stable, but that's definitely what stood out to me, and I could really see this lens being a nice, easy, lightweight video lens for me. When it came to the autofocus, this lens also worked pretty well, but I definitely noticed that from time to time it would be a little bit slower. If a bird moved quite quickly into a new position, it would often take it a little bit of time to reacquire the focus. If you're interested in this lens and want to see my full review and all my thoughts on it, make sure to check out the video that I posted a few days ago. We talk so much about gear on this channel that we often forget that gear isn't everything really. Gear is important, and better gear often helps you to take better images, but gear isn't everything. And I noticed something important and interesting in the comments of the review of the 100 to 400mm lens, because a lot of people ask me, why didn't you take it and try fast action with it, fast birds in flight, or took it to a dark rainforest, or taken it somewhere where the birds were really far away from me? And the simple answer is that I prefer to put myself and my gear in a position to succeed. So if I have a little lens like this that's wide open at f8, I don't really want to take it to the dark rainforest because I know I will not get good images, the lens will struggle, and I will not have a fun day. I prefer to put myself and the gear that I use in a position to succeed. I took it to spots with rather tame birds because I know in these situations I can take amazing looking images that basically look similar to an expensive prime lens with this little lens. So by putting this lens and myself in a position to succeed, I just have a lot more fun in the field and I get some really nice images. And I think this is something important to consider for all of you guys. Instead of sometimes trying to chase birds and they're only this small in your viewfinder and you're kind of not really having a fun day, it can be a lot more fun to look for spots with tame birds, like a duck pond for instance, or it can be a lot of fun to set up a little bird feeder in your backyard where you put out some water or some bird seed and have the birds come to you. You can find some nice perches and then get some fantastic shots even with very basic gear. And this is what I'm all about. I want you to have fun, I want to teach you photography, and I want you to put yourself in a position to succeed. And if you want to learn how to attract the birds to come to you so you can get nice close-up photos, I recommend that you check out my ebook, How to Attract Amazing Birds, where I teach you all my tricks you need to know to get the birds to come to you. And also my video Perch, where I teach you how I set up at a small water spot and get some really cool images. And once you've taken those images and want to edit them, I recommend that you check out my Pro Sets, where with just one click, you can transform your raw files to a great starting point. And then I would recommend that you check out my masterclass, where I teach you step by step all the necessary things that you need to know about image editing and how to make your own images look amazing. So if that's of interest to you, make sure to check all of these out down there in the description. I also want to say a big thank you to all of you who left some suggestions in the comments of my last video of your tripods you're using and which tripod brands you think I should be using. I spent a lot of time this week going through many different websites comparing tripods, and I actually managed to pick one that I think is pretty cool. I never used this brand before, so it'll be interesting to see what it's like, but hopefully it's here next week so I can show all of you guys. And until then, you might actually want to have a little guess which brand I ended up going for. I also bought another small piece of equipment that should help me to pimp up my Wimberley gimbal head and make it much easier to use. And I will also share that with you once I've tried it, because at the moment I'm not really sure if it's going to be good or not. But from what I've seen, it should make it much easier to take my camera on and off the tripod head. This week I also read a very interesting rumor about Canon applying for patents for f2 200mm lens, an f2.8 300mm lens, and an f4 500mm RF lens. These were like really popular sort of staple lenses in the EF lineup, and I'm sure many of you will be excited to also see the RF versions of these lenses. And the f4 500mm lens in particular has always been a very popular lens with many people. And in comparison to the 600 and 400mm lenses, the 500 hasn't seen that version 3/RF upgrade yet, and it would be very interesting to see how much lighter Canon will be able to make that lens, because it's so popular, and I think all of us would really appreciate a lighter, smaller 500mm lens. The only interesting question there then obviously will be the price, so hopefully they take a page out of Nikon's playbook and not make that lens too expensive. What I also find interesting is that we've seen a lot of different patent applications for different kind of 500mm lenses. We've seen f4.5 DO lenses, we've now seen an f4 500mm lens, kind of the traditional build. And then we've also seen a few patents for zoom lenses, like a 200 to 500mm lens with maybe even a built-in 1.4 extender. So it'll be very interesting to see what sort of 500mm lens Canon is going for next. And with all the chip shortages, it looks like a lot of that gear and the announcement is kind of being pushed back to the end of this year or early next year, just like the R7, but I'm really curious to see what 500mm lens we see first. What do you guys think? Which lens are we going to see first, and which lens would you prefer to see first? I know for me personally, the lens that I would find the most intriguing would be a 200 to 500mm f4 lens with a built-in 1.4 extender, because I think that would be great for video shooting in the field by having a little bit more flexibility. If you're in Australia, Canon also has a nice rewards program at the moment where if you buy certain cameras, you can either get a $300 Visa gift card pack or a Xander CF Express Type B 512GB card and a card reader. So that's a nice chunk of money you can get back, because especially that card costs a lot of money. And if you're buying an R5, for instance, and you get a free memory card with it, that can be quite a nice deal. So I think you should check that out. I think it's going to run all of May. Nikon USA has also issued a few nice rebates for their gear in May. Mainly on the wide angle lenses, but you can also save up to $500 when you buy a D850, for instance. So if you're on the market for one, I think this might be a great time to buy one right now. I've also read this week that Nikon has started to ship the 800mm PF lenses, at least in the US though. I haven't heard about anyone getting a lenses in Australia, but hopefully the lenses will ship down here soon as well, and my friend will get his soon, and I will be able to snatch it off him for a few days to make a review for all of you guys, because I think this will be a very fun and interesting lens to use in the field. When it comes to the Z9s, there's still a long wait list in most shops, but from time to time I read from someone in the comments on YouTube that they've got one basically instantly, because there's always, especially smaller shops that have some orders that fall through, someone's not picking up their camera, so they're suddenly having a camera and no buyer for it. Kind of what happened with the R3 cameras when I bought mine. When it comes to the bigger shops, Adorama has been one in the US who has updated their sort of shipping notice, and now they're saying there will be a batch of cameras coming in July. So it seems like for most people, unfortunately, will still be a few weeks or months until they get their Z9, but hopefully most of you will get it over the next few months and have a lot of fun with that camera in the field. So that wraps up the early bird photo news for today. I hope you enjoyed the show. I know I'm really looking forward to using this nice and lightweight lens in the field and see how I go with it. And what I need from you now is a thumbs up, a comment down there with your thoughts, and a subscription to my channel, and I will see you guys in the next video very soon. Bye.